All right, Lane, welcome to the campfire. We're a little bit mobile today, but it's still the same feel.
I'm glad to be here, and I see you're on the river. I'm in Long Beach, California, so I'm just a block away from the ocean and a short drive from a desert. And I'm in the middle of a big city, so maybe some of the things I can talk about today is about um, kind of mindful hiking in an urban setting.
That's something that I do a lot of myself, and I don't get the opportunity to really explore that with very many
Mm,
people as far as through conversation. It ends up being, people come to a class and they get intrigued and then they want to go out and hike, but living in an urban area, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to slow down and enjoy the
yes,
beauty that's all around you.
there's a lot of stimulation, visually and of course noise and yeah, the distances are much shorter. So it's not like you can just go on a trail and then no, like every block there's a stop sign or a street light, and so and of course you have to be aware of who's around you, in a lot of places, and so it creates a very different um, perception of space because I think when we're out somewhere, we should be aware of space, like and it's smaller in an urban setting. It's more intimate, but it's also kind of a little bit more dangerous in a way. You're kind of you're always aware. You're always aware, and you're being reminded that you are not alone. You're not, you're yeah. So it's definitely more difficult than being out in the nature and yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good point. When you're looking at walking a mindful trail and getting into a mindful practice, is we're
Hmm.
looking for different ways to actually help us practice being in the moment.
Yeah. Um, I had an interesting experience where we did an urban walk. You can call it an urban hike with this group at Zen Center Los Angeles when we hiked from the Zen Center Los Angeles to a Buddhist temple, which is about a mile and a half away. And a mile and a half is not much when you hike on a trail, but it's a very, very long distance when you walk through the heart of urban LA, which is probably one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the country. And so I wrote about it. I could actually read, if you'd like, a little bit of that, um, you
Yeah,
know,
go ahead.
from that piece. Okay. So it was called a mindful a mindful pilgrimage, opening up to the world on a city walk. We started with a circle, hands and gasho, chanting Mu. The sound first vibrated throughout my skull like an inner bell inviting me to turn inwards. And then, when shared by a group of 30, it turned into a spontaneous vibration, rising up to the morning sky. Pilgrimage is a purposeful walk. Reasons for it, the Zen Center meditation explained, could be as diverse as the people who make them. Some may want to embark on a spiritual journey, accumulate blessings, offer merit, or show homage to those that came before us. Others may want to process grief, memorialize the dead, or mend a broken heart. I set my intention on staying focused on the walk itself, and not letting myself to be distracted by the sights of the city. The week had been the week had been hectic, frantic even, and the pilgrimage would be a way to simply get out of my head and stop doing things and just walk. The plan was simple. Walk 2.5 miles from the Zen Center of Los Angeles to Dharma Vijaya, make offerings, chant, learn about the temple lineage, traditions, and caretakers, enjoy the snacks, and head back. We headed out of the gates of the center in a straight line. It was an early Sunday morning when most of the city was still asleep, and you could smell the ocean breeze and hear the birds, not just the traffic. The monks in orange robes, and those were the monks from the place we're going to, not at the Zen Center. So those monks rang the bells every 20 paces or so, a ding in the front, echoed by another in the back of the group, a helpful reminder to return to meditation. Our Vietnamese hats provided enough shade, which came in especially handy on our walk back at noon when the sun reached 90 degrees in the shade. I chose to observe the sensation of walking rather than breath, in part to make sure not to trip on broken up pavement. Should my thoughts overtake me, I would count the steps. After all, every step counts. In a single file, we walk through the areas of some of the highest population density in the United States. Fortress-like 1930s brickstones rising next to brand new condos crammed into former single house lots. We bowed silently to the people opening up the shops, rolling out recycle bins, hanging outside a corner store. A young Hispanic guy on a bike blocked the traffic as we were crossing Western Avenue to make sure we all crossed safely. We walked past the stately mansions, the homeless tent camps, the boarded up for lease signs, past the trendy hashtagged coffee houses, decaying couches and other urban refuse thrown up on the sidewalks, past botanica shops and strip mall Pentecostal churches, panaderias, travel agencies advertising flights to Central America, and tea rooms with signs solely in Korean. It was all so fascinating, I forgot about watching my steps. It's fine to be distracted, I realized. A pilgrim doesn't journey in some sensory deprived bubble. Just note these new impressions, receive them, and move on. I was walking through the heart of urban LA as if for the first time, seeing it without agenda, interacting with all that was around me. I became part of the landscape, not an erasure from it. I found peace not in withdrawing, but in opening up.
Yeah, I really liked how toward the end there you acknowledged the fact that you got distracted, but
Yes.
you're able to bring yourself back into the moment and get back in the flow of things. I
And realizing it's fine. It's all part of beginning to notice the space around you, and then there it is, and here I am, and here's that space, literally the distance between me, let's say, and the Mexican bakery panaderia. Um, it's kind of a noticing that, and here I am passing by it, moving forward, and it's still standing where it was, a moment ago. So yeah, all of that, all of that.
and there was no judgment in it.
None.
That right there, I believe, is actually one of the first lessons that you have to learn when you're beginning a mindful journey is to really understand the fact that it's okay to get distracted by the sights that are around you and
Hmm.
bring yourself back in without getting upset about it.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think any of us who've ever done meditation, I've been doing this for decades. You know, you sit down after, you sit down and you think you're just going to get into it, and it's not happening, and you start to feel guilt. You're like, well, how come and this and that? And I was like, just let go. You're sitting. That's good enough. Let's start there.
Exactly. Let's just be here. Whatever here looks like doesn't make a difference as long as you're making that intention to be there.
Right.
And if you slip away from it, and this is something that I work with a lot of people about, that idea of my mind drifts off into a different thought. It's
Hmm.
okay. When you're outside hiking, you can look up at the clouds and you can see the movements just, in its greatest presentation. You can look up and see how that cloud is drifting. And it's a great reminder that our thoughts do the same thing with our concentration. We can bring it back
Absolutely.
in, and there's no reason for that.
And that intention may change. I like this particular walk that I described. I started out with an intention of counting steps and hopefully slowing myself down. But I ended up realizing that, well, I'm not really counting steps, and that's okay. But instead, I'm noticing the world around me and my place in it. So there was something that was, instead of just being sort of rigid about this is exactly what I'm going to do today, when I'm sitting down. But then, well, maybe that's not what's really true to me right now, is it?
And it's really interesting to think about how that ends up carrying over from just a hiking experience into life in general.
Yes. Hmm.
Because as you start to become more peaceful with yourself, you start to become a little bit more relaxed about your practice and just finding that natural spot. It extends
Yes.
into the world around you, into the people that you interact with.
Yeah. And even during the meditation, let me tell you, Zen Center of Los Angeles is, like I said, it's in the heart of urban LA. It's what you call a mid city. It's kind of like where the Koreatown spills into a largely Hispanic neighborhood. It's very dense, and and so when you sit there, for example, there's a paletera. Paletera is a street vendor who sells ice cream. There's a paletera truck which comes around at the same time at 4 p.m. And so and you hear the honking, you hear the circus music playing, and, and you could be irritated, like, oh, it's interrupting my my moo, or you can just, oh, there's a paletera truck, right? It's here, and I'm here, and everything is here. Everything is here.
Exactly. Or it's 4 o'clock. I don't have to look at my watch. I know
Yeah,
what time it is. and
yeah,
and to me, that's another key thing that I found really has shifted and helped my mindful practice grow is just learning to have fun with all the things that you cannot control. Because I feel like, whether you're just out hiking or you're actually making the intention of meditating and building these practices, there is so many things that go on that you have no control over, that to
yeah.
get hung up on it is really a detriment.
It's hard when you grow up, wanting to be in control, and you direct many aspects of your life, but you can't always direct peace. I, I mean, and of course, what you're teaching, what I've been practicing is an instrument, a tool, but it's just an instrument. It's like you said, don't get hung up on the instrument. Don't get hung up on the technique. It's all about it. That's not really what matters. That's really not matters. I will never forget. I was meditating. I mean, I was doing a walking meditation at a place at a Buddhist place which was not Zen based. And so I was doing it my way, they were doing their way, and they came over to me and they said, "Well, you can't do it here." I'm like, "Okay." Oh, am I, I chose to leave, and without rancor, I'm like, "Okay, well, they just don't want me to do it here. That's fine." But it was like, well, ultimately, does it matter how I do it, if I'm not really interrupting the way other people do it, so it's an instrument. It's an instrument. It's important to find the one that the right type of instrument, the right type of practice that works for you. And I've tried different ways, and that takes a while. But that's ultimately just an instrument, just a way to get you to where you are.
That word instrument, it's an interesting one that keeps coming up. Actually, I was having a conversation this morning
Hmm.
about my own personal progress. And, throughout life, I've played instruments and,
Ah,
on stage performing and stuff. And I was always very comfortable with that. But when you remove the instrument, I was petrified. I had an actual phobia of interacting with people. And throughout that gap, I had put the instruments down altogether.
hmm.
I picked it up and started playing and performing again. And we were talking about, just how natural that was. And in reality, the metaphor of the instrument is really a way to gauge where you are, because we're always looking for signs of progress along our journey.
Mm.
And when you think of it just like as an instrument, any sort of physical form, you look at a tree and you see how it grows year after year, you can see it. But when you take the metaphor of it, even though it's still
Hmm.
invisible, you find that point that really helps you figure out how far you've come, where you can still find new things to work on, and where the growth still has room to happen.
Yeah. But can we talk about different types of instruments? Because it could be a walking meditation, it could be a sitting meditation, could also be a prayer. It could also be organizing your schedule mindfully and following that and noticing that. Um, so I think the way I see it is that the ultimate goal is to get us to see the reality for what it is. So it could be formalized in the form of a meditation, but it can also be formalized, and I mean it can also be reflected in other practices. If for you, I used to play musical instruments too, and I studied violin and piano. I wasn't very good at violin, but I love the piano, and just being there when you lose yourself and you improvise, and you're in that flow. I mean, that was a way to get back to yourself too. So I mean, I can relate to some of that.
It's funny that you say that because as I'm thinking about it, back then, that was my form of expression. The
Mm,
improv that came with playing bass, that came with playing drums. It was my way to literally get things out of me. And when I put that down and I stepped away from it, I really felt jumbled up inside for a
mm,
long, long time until I was introduced to meditation. And when that became the new normal for me and the new way of expression, meditation and journaling. And then to pick it up now. And it's almost as if, riding a bike. Even though you put it down, you never forget how to do it. And it adds one more tool to the toolbox for that form of expression. And I feel like when you put them all together, that's how you really discover your voice.
yeah, yeah. And the good thing about journaling is that you can always go back and look at it. And I do. I mean, I have like two of them right here. One is almost full, and the other one I started because I couldn't find the first one. But kind of like you open it and I'm a writer. I'm a writer. So to me, the idea of a dialogue with a text and a dialogue with a person who wrote something is very important. And when it happens to be the same person, like I wrote a memoir, so I am both the main character and the writer, about the main character. So the dialogue between the two, the changes, the transformation, the one you can see in your journal from, let's say, January till May, and in me, the way I'm viewing it, those things are really, really fascinating. And like you said, when you play bass and that was your way of expression, I'm more, I express myself with letters, with writing. So to me, that takes me into that place, that space that is not really confined by minutia, by routines, by things that that's and but it's also the space that is authentic to me. And so when you play the bass and you go back, you say you're expressing yourself, but you're also kind of journeying inwards too, right? That's how I feel when I write, and also when I read, what I wrote, what other people wrote. That's a very interesting place uh, to explore. Yeah.
And, as we're talking and I'm thinking about where I am right now,
Mm,
a lot of my progression is kind of leaving the past behind, letting it go and, whatever, so that it no longer, I'm no longer carrying it. It's no longer with me, valid, this and that. But now that I've repicked up the music part of my life and
right.
seen such a dramatic change, it's made me realize that the past, even though it's gone, is still relevant.
Of course.
It's always preparing us for the next stage in our life. And when we feel as if we're either stuck or we're stumbling too much, we can reach back into the old toolbox and we can find those things that used to help us then. And they
Hmm.
come when we do that, when we pick it back up, it comes back in a completely different context.
Yeah, it becomes part of us. It becomes part of our DNA in a way. Um, the theme of your podcast is mindfully outdoors. What's interesting is if you hike the same trail, the same season, but a year from now, it's going to be kind of the same, but also a little bit different. So in the same way, The mountain will still be there, the trees, most of them will be there. It might be smaller, might be bigger, maybe more leaves, but the thing is, what happened last year remains there, and it continues to grow. So there's this idea of permanence, but also change, which I think we can really notice when we're outdoors. When we're mindfully spending time outdoors. Be that in an urban setting, be that in hiking or walking down the beach. But the thing is, again, and it sort of like reflects who we are because we're also permanent, but we also change all the time. And we carry it with us.
And I feel like, as you say that, that idea of impermanence is
Mm,
something that a lot of us really struggle with throughout life, making sense of it and not just making sense, but actually finding peace with it.
right, right. Um, the book I mentioned is a memoir of my husband and I adopting two kids from foster care. And what's happening now is people usually ask, so you're describing the situation when they were babies, they were like 0 and 1 when we took it when we brought them in from foster care wanting to adopt, and then everything that happened following that. So how are they now? Well, now we're empty nesting. So like we had to, our daughters are now young, young adults. One is at college, another one is living independently, working. And so you feel this sort of passing of, I mean, we lived through their childhood, but now they're adults. It was very difficult but then I realized, we're not letting go. What happened happened. What's happening is happening now. They're still our kids. We're still very attached. It's just they're changing, we're changing, and we're sort of adjusting to these changes, but we remain, the same. There is permanence in that, in our love for them, our connection to them, and theirs to us. So, but it's what's interesting, I just want to finish this thought is that I feel like we're always catching up to them. We're always catching up to them. They're changing, and we're sort of like adjusting ourselves to how they change. You know, I feel like I'm not changing as much as they are, but okay, I can't parent the same way I did when they were like say 5 or 10 or 15. Now that they're 19 and 21, right? So I have to adjust. But even though it's sometimes uncomfortable, if you had teenage daughters, you would know what I'm talking about, or young adults. But it may be uncomfortable, but it's just adjustment. It's just adjustment. We still love each other. We still we're still a closely knit family, and so we just we're still the same people, continuing but changing as time goes on. So there's this again, this sort of interplay between permanence and some things that are changed that are impermanent. If you don't hold on to them and just assume that things will always be, 5 years from now we'll be dealing with different issues. They'll be somewhat different. We'll be somewhat different, but we'll continue this, dance, I should say.
And I want to get back to that point of impermanence because as we struggle with that, we start to make peace with it. There's another key component to it in the fact that all the changes you go through in life, they prepare you for that next footstep that lays ahead.
Hmm. They, you said they prepare you, or they?
Yeah, they all prepare you for the next footsteps that you're going to take.
Yes, yes, yes. But you have to adjust though. Sometimes you're not prepared. Sometimes life throws at you things that you're not prepared. And how you respond, whether you just react, um, or if you do something a little bit more skillful. Try to be objective. Try to maybe reassess who you are in this situation, who you are now. If there's I'm not. Let's say if there's a loss, or if there is an illness or something happens like that. So who am I now? How I can work with it. Because I'm still me, like you said. Yeah, it's prepared. Yeah, I'm still me, but like, how can I work with it instead of just reacting and trying to hold on to my preconceptions? Yeah.
See, that's where I find myself nowadays. Just a few
Mm.
months ago, I got my diabetes diagnosis.
Wow.
So, and that came after going to the hospital with the flu. And 20 minutes after getting that diagnosis, they were like, "Oh, by the way, are you diabetic?" I'm like, "No, not that I know of." Well, you're in DKA, so it's pretty intense. And that
Wow.
that was how I found out. And instead of being angry about it or feeling let down by
Hmm.
the circumstances, it was just a matter of simply going inward, during that hospital stay, and actually realizing that at this point in time, there's no better time throughout my life than right here and right now for this to have happened, because I've gone through all these different things that prepared me to work my
Mm.
way into the regiment, and instead of living with diabetes, teaching it that it has to live with me on my terms.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But you're still you.
Exactly.
You're still you, and you just got another challenge to deal with. And I'm sure, you've dealt with many other challenges before, but you've got another challenge, a hard challenge, difficult challenge to deal with. But, if you kind of separate yourself from, okay, the challenge is there, it's present. What can I do about it? What needs to be done? Because I'm still me. I'm still me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny too how in the moment life will still find ways to teach you a lesson,
Mm.
because as I'm
If we
going through
notice
this.
him, if we notice
Right.
it, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Exactly.
but if you know, because very often the lessons are there, but we just rushing past them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So life will
Exactly.
will teach you a lesson. Uh-huh.
Because clearly the DKA episode was the wake up call, and the hey, you gotta really get on this regimen and start doing this, these things. The
Hmm.
night before I got released from the hospital, this new doctor come in, and he started showing me pictures of, people that had let their diabetes go, and the results of, the feet and everything like that before they're amputated, trying to scare me into reality. And I'm thinking to myself, buddy, you could have saved yourself the 20-minute winded breath there by just
Hmm.
asking where I was at. Because going through a situation like that, it's one of those things that it's like, okay, this is a part of me now. I got to form a plan. I got to stick to it. But given where I'm at, and I'm not somebody that you're taking pictures like that of their feet or whatever,
Hmm.
I have an opportunity. I have a choice to still be me.
Yeah, and um to allow, despair to settle in or to become more proactive. And maybe that's the way to some sort of a balance, to peace, to become proactive about another challenge coming your way.
I think so,
Yeah.
because it's really just, it gets back to that idea of how every place that you look, there's
Mm.
always something that can point you in a new direction, or there's something in the environment that you can craft to help you with whatever challenges are before you.
Yeah. And the thing is, this happened, and tomorrow something else might happen. And
And
something
then,
even worse or better the week after. We don't know. We don't
right,
know. So what's permanent about it? Well, ourselves, and also the fact that we don't know. That's really, really permanent.
I want to add one more permanent aspect in there, because
Yeah.
there's people like us that we go through these different experiences and we share them. We put that story out there permanently in order to not only help, but again, inspire and teach somebody through our own experiences.
Mm. Yes, yes. Um, if they're willing to listen, or if they're interested, I actively seek out people, like you, people who actually, I can learn from and understand the world, understand myself, my place in it. Um, and if they're not interested or not ready, oh well, that's their choice. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Maybe they
Well,
find some other, I mean, I really hope they find some other way to get themselves engaged with their authenticity, with their, spirituality. Sure, sure.
Well, there's that old saying that comes to mind.
I would
Yeah,
never impose my beliefs in that sense, and I would never, by the way, assume that what I do is better than what they do. I know what works for me, that I do know. But maybe this is not the right path for them. So I'm willing to accept that.
I think it's really that authenticity, along with being able to keep yourself humble about it,
Yeah.
that that opens the door. But then on the other side of that door, it's just the willingness to get to know yourself, find out the
Mhm.
way that's going to work best for you. And then that old saying comes to mind, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And being willing and open to embrace it. Sometimes it does take humbling yourself, or throughout the course of that little bit of the journey, allowing it to humble you. I
Yeah.
think about Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, and how
Mm.
he just happened to wash up in Greece after losing his ship, and he had nothing to his name. He stumbled into a bookstore where the guy was talking about Socrates, and he asked after the lecture, he asked, well, where I can find my own Socrates. And his teacher just conveniently happened to appear because he was ready to learn. As the bookstore owner points out the doors, go follow him and talk to him. And he still had that bit of ego with him, that
Mm.
I don't want to be seen doing this and doing that. But through the training, every day he would have to carry a bowl of lentil soup around town, which was kind of looked at a little bit degrading, I guess, through his eyes. And one day his teacher seen him and tripped him up and spilled soup all over him. And just like everything in life, we get over that little hang up that's in our head real quick. And then we progress with that growth.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see if it was coming from his teacher, he might have been doubly upset. He
Exactly.
might have read some intention to, but he just tripped and he spilled his soup. Things happen. Things happen. So where's that? I need to wipe it. I need to wipe it up. I need to clean myself. That's really all there is to it. You know, um, the thing that is kind of central to me right now, in where I am, is and I'm actually writing about it too, is kind of the full understanding of the word enough. That I have enough. I have more than enough, to be honest. I have to learn from, to work with, to enjoy. I mean, I definitely have enough, and I don't need anymore. And also, maybe because I'm getting older, I'm getting better at saying at just at the end of the day, instead of like doing, okay, I'll just do one more thing. I'll just do one more thing. No, that was enough for the day. And if it's not going to happen, oh well, it's just not going to happen. That's really my agenda. Oh well, it's just not going to happen. Okay, because I was always a kind of a high achiever, extra, 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 and now it's like, okay, enough. I've done enough for the day. I've contributed enough, and now it's time to rest or do something else. So kind of just drop that. Just drop that. That's my kind of point that I'm working on right now.
See, I love that. And I think about how within my life that's progressed because, I did the 14-hour work days chasing all the shiny stuff and thinking that was life. You get the
Mm.
house, you get the family, and then all of a sudden the impermanence comes up and that's all taken away.
And it upends everything, right?
And you find yourself in that situation where you just spilled the soup on yourself.
Yeah.
And you realize that life can be so much more fulfilling when you simplify things. And then, to get to that point of enough for the day, that's being reinforced by the adjustments with diabetes
Hmm.
because I still get into modes where I'm just flowing through the day and I'm going and going and going and then all of a sudden that blood sugar tanks and I gotta stop and treat that, lay down, let things catch up. And it can be frustrating. It can definitely be hard at times, but I think having that simplicity frame of mind makes life a lot easier to adjust on the fly.
I think in a very unpleasant way, I should say, but it reminds you of you, Reminds you of you and your own and your needs that really supersede everything else at the moment. You know, I'm not into I don't subscribe to the idea, okay, you just need to give everything away, simplify to nothing. No, I mean, people that I know, they work hard all their lives. The problem is that they don't always seem to enjoy what they have. And this one, that's to me the idea. Okay, well, you worked so hard to build all this up. Enjoy it. Maybe you don't need any more, but enjoy what you have. You have a house that you paid all this mortgage for. Enjoy that. You know, the job that you feel good about, well, feel good about it. You know, so your kids, your spouse, your loved ones, just you've done this, it's there, enjoy it, it's there, it's enough. Yeah.
It really is. It's about actually, I think, again, going inward and finding the definition of what your true values are, what's really important to you, and then honoring that by what you put around you.
Yeah.
But then also, you know, those moments where you get the opportunity to kind of go without something, give yourself a little bit of space there and some grace to really get used to that idea and learn to be comfortable within that. Because I know I've experienced it where you have everything you're looking for and then it's gone. And the torment that you can feel inside when your world gets flipped upside down is very hard to come back from.
Hmm.
So taking that's something that I do a lot now is, yeah, I've reestablished myself, but with getting out on the trails and doing the hiking that I do, there's
Hmm.
times that I go out with a lot less equipment than I should, just so that I can practice being uncomfortable. And then I bring that back into the daily world when something comes up or something's missing. It's okay. There's
Yeah,
no sense
yeah.
of panic because I've practiced.
I'll work around it, right? I can work around it. Yeah, working with less. To me, honestly, it's when you camp, you're instead of a house, you're in a little tent. There's not much between you and the ground, and it's definitely a great reminder of the distance between what we really need and what we have. So, yeah, yeah, and that's definitely another advantage of hiking, of camping, of being outdoors. Kind of remind yourself that look how little you actually need to enjoy what's there. Yep.
And I think a great byproduct actually speaks to the impermanence of life
Mm.
because a lot of the time when we're chasing all the shiny things, we let that become our value, our worth, and even our identity. And the same goes with, the diagnoses and the labels that we pick up through life. We allow
Yeah.
that stuff to become who we are. But when you're out there on the trail with a little bit less and you have to work a little bit harder, get a little bit more creative and craft a few things, you're giving yourself an opportunity to build up a different sense of self worth, self value, self definition that nobody or nothing else can take away from you.
Well, I think it's amazing how much of what you just said is coming from other people, that it's other people's perceptions of who you are, that begin to matter, their approval. Um, I just gave a talk on my campus to a pretty large group. It was about 250 students and faculty. It was talking about our journey, our book, and all that. And so one of the takeaways in that talk was just kind of own yourself. Yeah, own your authentic self. And then I said, and I, because I had most of my audience were students, college age students, and they're like, early 20s. And I said, well, haters gonna hate, but it's their problem, not yours. And I got this ovation that I wasn't planning for. I was just kind of, I prepared my speech, and all this, but I was like, I think I mean, like when you really realize that, okay, well, that's other people's attitudes. That's what that really that's their attitudes. but you're still you. I mean, it doesn't really change. Their perceptions of you doesn't really change who you are. So when you're saying when you get out and get out outdoors and you're alone, let's say on that hike, the beautiful around the beautiful lake where you are or in the woods, you know, there are no other people. You are like one on one with yourself. You're in the nature, but nature doesn't judge you. It doesn't stick labels to you, right? So that's yeah, that I think that's a good reminder of kind of returning to being who you are and letting go of all those labels and preconceptions about who you are, who you should be.
I think the only thing I can add on top of that, because the word judgment has come up so much,
Hmm.
it's okay to not be judgmental or not to be judged. You know,
Let them.
there's exactly, there's that idea that there's so much going on within the system that you live. You can still build your life, your character, and live the value system that you have without the recognition of other people. As long as you're
Hmm.
doing it authentically inside for the reasons that matter to you, then you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing for your story and ultimately the group of people that are important to you.
Mm. And I would say that while, again, we shouldn't subscribe to other people's judgments of us, I think it's important to notice the real intention there, or look like the real subtext behind that. Somebody is passing judgment on them. Well, there might be hurt, maybe there might have been something in their own life that makes them, um, treat you in a certain way. They might not like you. That's just the bottom line. They might not like you. Or, somebody is being very supportive to you, and that should be recognized. They say one thing, but they really are supporting you in doing that. Maybe your grandmother is telling you something you don't want to hear and you disagree, and you're definitely not going to do this, but she's reaching out to you because she wants the best for you. Well, we can honor that, right? So, it's words are tricky because there's a surface level of what people say, but there's this underlying intention as to what they really try to do or how they feel about you. I think those layers should be noticed. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of time to talk about your book. So as we come to the end of this conversation, I want to give you some time to talk about your work and I want to celebrate that with you.
Okay. Well, I originally reached out to you because I wanted to tell you and your listeners about the book that I wrote, which is a memoir of us adopting two kids, two babies from the foster system here in Los Angeles. And it was the book that I never planned to write. We went into the process, wanting to give a home to one or two kids from the system. And Los Angeles has the largest foster care system in the country, larger even than New York. And we were faced with a lot of adversity, kind of like on two levels. One of which was as a foster adoptive family in a system which preference gives a preference to biological parents, but we're like really outside of the process while we were raising the kids, week after week, month after month, year after year. We're still nothing and no one in the system when we're excluded from the process of decision making for the kids that we were raising. And also at that time, we were a gay couple before we had equal rights. So we were two, in the eyes of at least the federal government, we were two individuals, single individuals raising two related kids somehow. And there are other things which are also at play. So basically, making it through that experience and coming out at the other end is still as one family, a little bit scarred, I should say, but still, that's kind of what my book is about. It's called A Family Maybe, and it was published last year by a press at by the press at Portland State University. So it's published by a regular publishing house and so on and so forth. So I've been talking about it, and I've been focusing specifically on, okay, well, that happened. That's a story. That's, tells you how things are in the world of child welfare, foster care, foster adoption, children's courts, yes. But ultimately, it's about, what makes a family, what makes a parent. That's what really made me think about, what really makes it a parent where both a biological parent and an adoptive parent are claiming ownership over the child. What really is a parent? What makes a family? So those are kind of larger um, issues that I've been thinking about in writing that book.
I think it's beautiful, and I'm really grateful that we finally got the opportunity to get together, have this conversation.
Well,
Before I
thank you
let
for
you
this
go, man,
opportunity.
definitely. Before I let you go, you got to let people know how to get the book in their hands and what you got coming up, all that good stuff.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, you can find, because it's distributed by a regular press. The book is called The Family, comma maybe, and you can find it on Amazon, on Bookshop. If you want me to sign it for you, you can go to my website, and I'll be happy to send it to you and sign it. Um, what I've been working on is I'm writing a lot of nonfiction. I'm not a fiction writer. I'm really interested in life and in real people, and like you said, kind of lessons we can learn from it, what kind of sort of things that go underneath. And I've been writing more and more about travel, and spirituality. I had an essay published. We don't have time for it, but which was about very interesting experience where I went swimming in an underground lake in Mexico, in the cenote in Yucatan, and that experience sort of brought me back to my own sort of cultural and religious background. So it was published by Parabola, which is a kind of a magazine which writes about spiritual issues and search for meaning. And so, yeah, those are the kinds of things that I work on. I do write about mindfulness from perspective of someone who is Jewish and practicing. I'm a practicing Jew, but also somebody who comes from the Zen Buddhist background. So if someone is interested, I put out a monthly free newsletter called Blessing the Sea, and you can find it on my website. You can check it out, and if that's something of interest to you, subscribe, and I'll be happy to share with you my kind of ongoing spiritual journey there. And my
Awesome.
website is laneigoudin.com, LANEIGOUDIN.com.
Well, Lane, we'll have to get together again sometime down the road.
Yeah, maybe hike together.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
Yeah, I would love that too. Thank you.